Hello, everyone, and welcome to Four Lads Had a Dream podcast. Breaking news this morning on the takeover. We'll have a full update with that on this Wednesday, the 12th of March. Kenny, thanks for joining us. Good news, it seems, this morning.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Didn't expect that this morning, did you? But good to hear. Good to see that things are moving forward, Stevie.
Yeah, it is. So let's journey back to last week. Sky Sports reported that big breaking news that due diligence was now underway. Legal documents were to be exchanged. Now, we covered that story, but a couple of days prior to that, Chris Jack actually already had the story in the Rangers Review, telling everybody that would be the next step. So fast forward to this week, fair to say last week was fairly quiet after that, takeover-wise. We had obviously the Fenerbahce game. We're now match day -1. We've got press conferences and things today, so that will step up. But this morning, breaking news by Chris Jack. We will go through it. He reports for the Rangers Review that the Rangers Takeover deal has moved a step closer to completion after key parties received their first tranche of the legal paperwork required to bring about regime change at Ibrox. So the first tranche of everything, Kenny, first legal documents have been exchanged, and the Rangers Review understands a multi-million-pound transaction is on course to be completed by the end of May as high-level negotiations continue at high speed behind the scenes. That's a fairly significant update, Kenny.
Yeah, and it's really quick. For it to happen in a week and get up the update like that is really good news. I did say last week on here that I thought it would be done by the end of May because of the wording, of the stuff last week where they had said it will be done by June. So I expected it to be done by the end of the season, and it looks as if that is what's going to happen, isn't it? And listen, I've said this before, the quicker it happens and the sooner it happens, the better for everybody, mate. And thanks to everybody concerned, this current regime, but let's move forward. That's kind of my feeling and take on it.
Yeah, we'll get towards personal feelings, I think, towards the end of this. But Chris Jack does continue to say that blockbuster move started in October. Talks are really positive. And Para Marathi, the chief executive of 49 Enterprises, and tycoon Andrew Kavanagh are the two major figures on the brink of an agreement. Dave King told Rangers Review that he would be selling. John Bennett and Barry Scott are also expected to offload their entire shareholdings as part of the agreement, which would take the 49ers to around 21%, Kenny. And then several other key figures will sell a percentage of their stock to ensure the American consortium have a controlling interest of 51% in Rangers. So what I think you'll find is that the likes of the Parks and things like that will sell the majority of those shares, keeping a minority stake. But the Americans will be the major players in this going forward.
Yeah, and that's interesting because we had heard that before, haven't we? That some will be selling a percentage of their shares. And listen, if anything, that's quite a good thing because, at the end of the day, they won't have any control, but they'll still have an interest. And that can only be good for us as fans, that there's a lot of Rangers people still kicking about the shareholding that have our best interests at heart. And if you feel anything was untoward, then you've got people there that are really, as shareholders, that would be quite prepared to speak up and explain to the new owners what us as fans would feel about certain issues. So that I think that's quite a good thing in the sense that they are, maintaining a holding as such. So good. I'm actually delighted to hear that because, as I said, it came unexpectedly this morning because my initial reaction to the article from Chris this morning is that that's really quick. 1 week, from, being told there's due diligence, we're already being kept informed. And that's nice to see that fans are being kept up to date, Stevie.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And what I would imagine is people maybe saying they want rid of all the shareholders and to move aside. I understand that completely. But at the same time, I think when you look at what the 49ers did with Leeds, where they actually bought Leeds up in stages, they'll obviously get enough to be the major percentage holders at this moment in time. And then they'll maybe in years to come, I would imagine, pick off everybody else and buy up the remaining shares. And that'll probably be done with the consent of everybody else still involved who will hang about just to make sure, as Kenny, you said, there was nothing untoward happening or things like that. And then go from there. Rangers do need to, learn from previous mistakes with that. So I'm not too fussed with that. Obviously, King, Bennett, Barry Scott selling out completely will bring in that change as well. Chris goes on to say that in his article that it will be transformative on and off the pitch. There would be a couple of believed to be at least 2 appointments will be made to the Ibrox board once the transfer of power has been finalised. Obviously, we should maybe mention that, Kenny, that the 2 boardroom people going on, we're unsure at the moment if Marathi will put himself forward because obviously he's the chairman of Leeds and the EPL rules state, and I do have them also to hand. And I spoke to people regarding this takeover last week and what that actually meant for us. And what it is EFL strange rules prevents its clubs from buying controlling stakes in Scottish club as it treats them as domestic. It's a sticking point for some other clubs previously. However, this rule will almost certainly be scrapped at the EFL's AGM in June. So people worried, and that will completely negate anyway if Leeds go up. Now, Leeds are currently in a 3-way battle along with Sheffield United and Burnley, who both drew last night to try and get automatic promotion. So those rules maybe don't really change as much, but you would imagine that Andrew Kavanagh would be one of the 2 most likely going on that board, Kenny.
Yeah, I think it'll be Andrew Kavanagh and somebody from the 49ers Enterprises, wouldn't it? So I would imagine that's what it will be. And if, what you're saying there about the San Francisco 49ers getting 21%, you're looking at Andrew Kavanagh getting literally 30% there, 29.9% effectively. By the sounds of it, I don't know if that's the case, but that's what it sounds like to get to the 51%, doesn't it? So, yeah, but look, it's these rules, as you said before, we've discussed it on here, that they are apparently going to get changed. But I don't think it would put too much of any spanner in any works in terms of if the Marathi wants to come on to the board, then if he can't because of these rules, does he resign from Leeds and come to us? Or, and that solves it? Or does he just put somebody else, a trusted right-hand man, in place until this is all done and dusted and the rules are all changed, Stevie? So it's interesting because when you listen to, or when you read it, it does sound as if this is moving forward really, really swiftly. And I would imagine that with the professionalism that they have, that this isn't going to be an issue, Stevie. That's what I'm kind of looking at and thinking, well, they will have a plan B if these rules aren't changed, Stevie.
It's not going to come this far, folks, down the line for something like this to suddenly kibosh it or put it off. So I'm not concerned about that in the slightest. There is ways and means around it, whether, like Kenny says, put somebody else on the board. Kenny, it's probably the first time we've definitely heard a timeline in regards to completion. The end of May isn't long at all. The end of May would actually be perfect in terms of what this club need to do. It's a huge summer. We have a manager to find. We have various things to complete off the park. You would imagine that Patrick Stewart is continuing at full speed with these kind of things. Several appointments need to be made to strengthen the staff and things we know about and the infrastructure of the club. That's all perfectly fair to say. That's been covered by Patrick Stewart himself. But this football team need, realistically, obviously they need a new manager, but realistically it needs a cash injection short term. They can't throw 100 million at it. That's not how it's going to work. But they need to continue to be sensible in the transfer market, but at the same time they need to find that quality required to bridge the gap and do it in a successful manner. I'm not going to speculate on how much it might be able to give to Rangers, but it's certainly going to no longer have that worry about the finances behind the football club. I would say that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we've discussed this over and over on here. We on Four Lads feel that it's not the spending the money, it's the issue, Stevie. It's the spending it in the right manner and getting the right players. And that, for me, with one of the initial, news releases, or press releases, was that we would have access to their San Francisco 49ers database, and that kind of thing can only help us, because by all accounts it is the system they use is one of the best on the planet. And therefore, what we have to do is, I mean, you've seen us last week, Stevie. We turned up in Turkey, we beat a good Fenerbahce side 3-1, and then we turned up in domestic football, and we have a team designed to play in European football and not in Scottish football. So you're hoping that with things like that, that's where, if the sporting director knows the league that we're in, that can be addressed properly. It's not the spending the money, Stevie. I've been feeling that for the last couple of years. It's the spending it on the correct players, spending it wisely, getting value for money, and I would expect that to happen, because you know what these American sports companies are like, mate. They don't waste money. They just don't. They are very, very good at getting value for their buck, and I expect them to do that.
We're going to change tack slightly. Obviously, last night there was breaking news that Rangers had required a bank loan, and there was a lot of discussion online regarding this. It's quite simple, really. And I'm going to try and break this down in the most logical fashion as we can, because we don't have a proper answer, because the club won't comment on it. Rangers are in the middle of a takeover, so share issue and like what they're doing with the shares, how many are going to be sold and everything will already be agreed. That's all going to all be in situ. As we've seen this morning with the breaking news about this, paperwork being exchanged and things on course. Rangers wanted to make managerial change. The new owners that are prospectively coming in would have okayed that. That would have been absolutely fine. They wouldn't have done that without anybody discussing it with them. In order to fund that, they simply have taken a short-term loan from the bank that Bennett's talked about them before. I think they're the leading bank for borrowing for EFL clubs and Premiership clubs and stuff as well. And we'll basically offset that against money that's coming in for what we think is the transfers of a couple of players. Namely, we think there's a small amount owed with Sam Lammers being one of them as well. So it's not a lot of money. We're not talking about millions of pounds. I don't think that's right. But they're basically taking that, and it's basically in order to in order to pay off Philippe Clement and make that managerial change. So it's basically, I'm sure it's a bill that the Americans will pick up when they come over. It'll be small fry to them. I don't expect it to be anything more than round about, £1 million or so for that kind of bill. So we're not talking about a massive amount. It's obviously hit the headlines yesterday, Kenny, but you can only hope that these kind of things, once this takeover goes through, will be the kind of headlines that we want to avoid, because these headlines allow speculation and allow other people to have a say on stuff that really isn't a big deal, that happens everywhere, but is magnified for our football club. And I'm looking forward to a normality where these things are no longer the headlines.
Yeah, absolutely. I was all over Celtic Twitter last night trying to find out what was going on, mate, because they're all accountants, they're all tax experts, they're all lawyers, they know everything. So, but even they couldn't really tell us, which was quite strange. We found out for ourselves. And yet, listen, I agree with you. I think that this kind of thing is going to stop completely. But I can understand this. I can understand what they're doing. At the end of the day, they'll not want to be putting loans or anything like that. And when you're going through due diligence, Stevie, I'm not even sure they would be particularly allowed to, because this will be in the hand of lawyers and insurance companies, and it would, as you say, to just this is why we're on, that there's paperwork delivered, and if you've got something like this, and it is a situation where you're putting a lot of loan and there's more paperwork. Whereas with this, as you say, it's just going to pass forward. It is literally, I think they said Tony Cholak and Sam Lammers, I think. Now, there'll not be a lot there. I think you said about $1 million. I don't even know if it'll be as much as that, but it'll be around there. It'll be between £500,000 and £1 million. And it is just to cover that. And, best wishes to Philip Clement and his career, but, it's better to get that done and dusted before then, this all carries forward, because the way this is going at a great pace. So I can understand it.
Absolutely, folks. It is match day -1. Huge game against Fenerbahce later on this week, tomorrow. We have the press conference today, Barry Ferguson and then Jose Mourinho later on at Ibrox. I'm working. Can I get over to one or two of them? I'm not sure. I'm certainly going to try. That's the game plan, that's for sure. Match day vlog will be tomorrow. You can join me at Ibrox Stadium for that. And it should be good fun. What a European night we're waiting for. But Kenny, the takeover goes at full speed. Revolution and change is upon us. Can't quite come soon enough to stop headlines and things like that. But it's nice to know that we now have completion dates. We now have a timeline. We now have these things being reported. And it really is full steam ahead.
Yeah, it is. And it's good news. I mean, it's positive news, Stevie. And in my opinion, it can't come soon enough. I think we're primed for a takeover. We're at a position where, we are incredibly, the potential in our football club is incredible. And if they can bring some of that potential out of us, that's great news. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow night. I think it'll be a cracker. I think the whole place will be rocking. And let's see if we can get ourselves into a quarter-final or another European tournament, Stevie, because you wouldn't have thought that at the start of this season when you were watching what we were churning out, would you?
Certainly wouldn't, considering we can't even get past Queen's Park to get into Scottish Cup quarters, never mind a European quarter. So full steam ahead tomorrow night, folks. Thanks for joining us. As we said, the takeover steams on. Huge breaking news from Chris Jack over the Rangers Review. Hope you've enjoyed us discussing it, and we look forward to this being completed in the future for Rangers Football Club, which is surely bright. Catch you all soon.
Four Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clyde Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited, and CSD Air Conditioning, along with Art of Gold. Thank you for listening or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.